They say every mother knows her child better than anyone. That we can sense their pain before they even cry it out. That we can read the smallest change in their voice, the flicker in their eyes. But what happens when the whispers you hear about your child paint a picture you don't recognize? That was my nightmare. The moment love clashed with doubt. The moment my shield as a mother cracked. I've always believed a parent's love is a kind of armor, invisible, unbreakable. From the moment my son Daniel was born, I promised myself that nothing would touch him. Not pain, not fear, not the cruelness of this world. So the first time I heard someone whisper something dark about him, I laughed it off. I thought, not my Daniel. It was a Tuesday morning at the local coffee shop. The kind of place where the barista remembers how many sugars you take, where neighbors ask about your garden or your grandkids before you even sit down. Comforting, familiar, safe, until I heard his name. I was waiting for my cappuccino when two women at the next table leaned close. Their voices were hushed, but my son's name cut through their whispers like a blade. Daniel. I froze. One of them glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. I saw him again last night. Same place, same time. I swear, he's hiding something. The other woman shook her head. It just doesn't look right. Always after dark. Never tells anyone. If his mother knew. If his mother knew. That single line burned into me. Because I was his mother. On the drive home, I tried to dismiss it. People gossip. They take half-truths and spin them into full-blown stories. Daniel was 30, working long hours, busy, independent. Of course, I didn't know every detail of his schedule. But still, the whispers clung to me like cobwebs I couldn't brush away. That night, when Daniel came over for dinner, I studied him more closely than ever before. He looked normal. A little tired, maybe, but who isn't after work? He hugged me, kissed my cheek, praised my roast chicken, asked about my garden. My son, warm, kind, the same boy I'd raised. And yet, when I asked about his week, he avoided eye contact. His hands fidgeted with his phone, swiping too quickly, then tucking it away like a guilty secret. I brushed it off. But unease had already begun to take root. The next week, I returned to the same coffee shop. Only this time, I wasn't just waiting for my drink. My ears strained, listening. And I heard it again. He's back at it, one woman whispered. Always in the same corner of town. Someone should say something. Her friend shivered. I'd never want to cross him. He gives me chills. Chills. My son. My Daniel. Giving people chills. I wanted to stand up and defend him, to shout, "You don't know him like I do." But instead, I sat frozen, pretending to scroll my phone while my heart thundered. That night, I pulled out the old family albums. Daniel as a toddler, ice cream dripping down his chin. Daniel in high school, beaming with his soccer trophy. Daniel at graduation, arms wrapped around me, pride lighting up his face. That wasn't a boy who gave people chills. That wasn't a man sneaking into dark corners of town. That's not my son, I whispered. But the photo in my hand and the whispers in my head refused to align. For days, I wrestled with myself. A part of me begged to ignore it. He's grown, he doesn't owe you every detail of his life. But the bigger part, the mother in me, felt gnawed by responsibility. What if he was in trouble? That question became a knife twisting inside me. And finally, it cut deep enough to push me into action. The first night I decided to watch him, I told myself it wasn't really spying. Daniel had said he was working late. I drove past his office, just to check. But the building was dark. The parking lot empty. My pulse quickened. Then I saw his car pulling out from a side street. Without thinking, I followed. He drove across town, leaving behind the clean, safe neighborhoods I knew. The streetlights flickered here, the shops boarded up, corners filled with figures who slipped into shadows as headlights passed. Finally, he parked outside a rundown building, its paint peeling, windows broken. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. What was he doing here? Daniel stepped out, glanced around once, then disappeared inside. I sat frozen, torn between rushing in and running away. 30 minutes later, he emerged with a small box. He carried it as if it were fragile, placing it gently in his car before driving off, calm as if he'd just picked up milk and bread. I followed him home, watched as he carried the box inside. That night, I didn't sleep. My mind spun with questions, each darker than the last. Over the next few days, the signs only multiplied. His phone buzzing constantly. Stepping outside to take calls. His answers clipped, distracted. And then the jacket. One evening, as I reached to hang it up, a metallic smell hit me. Sharp, unmistakable. Not quite blood, but close enough. My heart dropped. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't shrug this off anymore. I couldn't just dismiss it as gossip. I had to watch. Really watch. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I loved him too much to let something swallow him whole while I stood by. Looking back, I see it clearly. That was the turning point. The moment when love blurred into suspicion. When protection twisted into intrusion. I told myself I was doing it for him. For his safety. For the little boy in those photo albums. But deep down, I knew another truth. I wasn't just afraid of what he might be doing. I was terrified of what I might find. The days following that unsettling conversation with my neighbor were heavy, like a storm cloud refusing to move from above my head. I told myself to shake it off, that people will always talk, and gossip has a way of growing teeth sharper than the truth. But no matter how hard I tried, those whispered words clung to me like smoke in my lungs. Impossible to exhale. At breakfast, while I buttered my toast, the thought returned. In the garden, with my hands deep in the dirt, it followed me. At night, in the silence of my bedroom, it circled endlessly in my mind like a vulture. Your son is not who you think he is. I whispered into the empty kitchen, as though to defend him to the walls themselves. No. That's not possible. He's a good boy. But once a seed of doubt is planted, it doesn't matter how many times you say no. It grows. It was only when I began really watching my son that the cracks started to show. Daniel had always been an open book with me, telling me about his work, his friends, even which sandwich shop made the best pastrami. But lately, the pages of that book were slammed shut. His answers grew shorter. His smile more rehearsed. His phone was always in his hand, yet tilted just slightly away whenever I drew close. Who are you texting? I'd ask lightly, trying to sound casual. Oh, just work stuff, Mom. Head slipped the phone into his pocket so quickly it was as if the device had burned his hand. The first time, I told myself I was overreacting. The second time, I felt the sting of doubt. By the third, I knew I was seeing something he didn't want me to see. He also started coming home later. Overtime, he claimed. Deadlines, Mom. You know how it is. But whenever I asked for details, what project, what client, his stories stumbled. Daniel never stumbled. He was sharp, exact, a man who remembered everything. Now, he was slippery. One evening, as I set the table, his phone buzzed on the counter where it was charging. I glanced without meaning to. A blocked number. Not once, but twice. The second call vibrated with urgency, almost like a warning alarm. When Daniel walked in, I held it out to him. Someone's trying to reach you. For a fraction of a second, his face froze. It was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by a smile I'd seen him wear when he was hiding something as a boy. "Oh, it's nothing, Mom. Just spam." But he turned his back to me as he said it, lowering his voice, pacing into the hallway. I strained to hear. His voice was low, tense, clipped, like someone trying to keep control of a fire that was spreading too fast. Then, one word cut through crystal clear: tonight. When he came back, his expression was calm again. Too calm. His eyes, however, darted it, searching, checking if I had overheard. My heart pounded. Something wasn't right. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was it money? Gambling? Drugs? Or worse, was he tied to people who could hurt him or me? I wanted to laugh at myself, to say I was being ridiculous. But the whispers, the blocked calls, the strange hours, it was a pattern too loud to ignore. At the market a few days later, I ran into one of Daniel's childhood friends. She hugged me warmly, but when I mentioned him, her smile faltered. "How's he been doing?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. She hesitated, then leaned closer. "Be careful. He's not the same person we grew up with." I froze. "What do you mean?" She shook her head, instantly regretful. I shouldn't have said anything. "Just watch him." Then she left, as if she'd said too much already. It was the second warning. First my neighbor, now his old friend. Both planting seeds of suspicion, both urging me to look closer. I pushed my cart down the aisle, but my groceries felt like stones pressing against my chest. That night, Daniel came home late again. His shirt was rumpled, his hair a mess. A faint smell clung to him, not cigarettes, but something metallic, something sharp. I wanted to grab his shoulders, shake him, demand, "Tell me the truth." But when I opened my mouth, the words caught in my throat. He looked so tired, so weighed down, as though he was carrying a burden too heavy for one person. So instead, I simply said, "Dinner's on the table." He smiled softly. For just a heartbeat, I saw my little boy again, the one who used to curl up in my lap with scraped knees, whispering, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll protect you." The memory pierced me like glass. But love couldn't erase the evidence. Something was wrong. And a mother's love isn't just about comfort, it's about protection. I bought a small notebook and kept it hidden in my nightstand. Each time something felt off, I wrote it down. The late nights. The secretive calls. The new men he greeted on the street, strangers with eyes that looked past me instead of at me. At first, it felt obsessive. But as the pages filled, patterns emerged. Nights aligned. Calls came at the same hours. Stories repeated with slight changes. And then, one entry froze me cold. It was a Tuesday. Daniel rushed out, muttering about work. Later, when I carried laundry into his room, I found his work uniform still neatly folded on the chair. He hadn't gone to work at all. I sat on the edge of his bed, staring at that shirt as if it could explain itself. My pen trembled as I wrote the word in my notebook, lied. Why lie? Where had he gone? In that moment, the denial I'd been clinging to shattered. My son wasn't just hiding something, he was living a secret life. And as his mother, I was about to uncover a truth that could change everything. The first few nights after following my son, I tried to dismiss what I'd seen. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just driving to clear his head. Maybe the hushed meetings and the late-night phone calls were harmless. He was my boy, after all. The same boy I had nursed through fevers, cheered for at soccer games, and scolded when he stayed out too late. Surely there had to be an explanation. But explanations didn't silence instinct. And a mother's instinct is a drumbeat you can't ignore. His rhythm was off, subtle at first, like a song played out of key, but once I heard it, I couldn't unhear it. It began on a Thursday. He told me he was working late, but at exactly 10:15 p.m., I watched his car slip out of the driveway like a shadow escaping the house. I didn't follow that time. I just lay awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I had imagined it. But the next Thursday, it happened again. Same time. Same quiet pull into the night. My stomach sank deeper, weighted with a dread I couldn't name. Friday morning, as he scrolled casually through his phone at the kitchen table, a message flashed across his screen. His eyes flickered alarm just for a heartbeat before he locked it away. That split-second panic didn't belong to an innocent man. That wasn't secrecy. That was fear. That week, when he left his phone unattended, I broke my own promise. I told myself I wasn't snooping, just glancing. Just checking. But what I saw hollowed me out. The messages weren't from friends or coworkers. They were from someone saved only as D. Not a name. Just an initial. The texts were short, cold, and commanding, same time. Don't be late. Bring it. Bring what? Don't be late for what? I set the phone down before he returned, but my hands shook so violently I nearly dropped it. The following Thursday, I couldn't resist. I followed again, hard hammering, palms damp against the steering wheel. He drove the same route, winding back streets, deserted stretches, until the city lights thinned into the industrial edge of town. He pulled into a dimly lit corner by an abandoned storage facility. Another car was already waiting. I stayed hidden, crouched low in the shadows. The two men spoke quickly, their voices sharp. I couldn't catch it all, but fragments drifted across the night air. Too much risk. Next shipment. You're sure no one knows? Then I saw it. The other man handed him a small package. My son slipped it into his jacket with practiced ease. No hesitation. No questions. I bit my lips so hard I tasted blood. Every cell in my body screamed to run to him, to shake him by the shoulders and demand the truth. But fear glued me in place. If I confronted him now, I might shatter whatever fragile bridge still existed between us. That night, lying awake, the images collided with memories of a boy who no longer seemed to exist. I saw him chasing fireflies barefoot in the backyard, his laughter rising with the hum of summer. I remembered the night he cried over stepping on a bug, apologizing to it as though he had ended a life that mattered. I saw him, 12 years old, staggering home with a black eye because head stood up for a smaller boy being bullied. He had been reckless, yes, but righteous. Brave. How could the boy who once bled for justice now accept packages in the dark? The war inside me raged. He's an adult. Respect his privacy. Trust him. But then another voice, sharper, crueler. What if trust kills him? What if trust lets him slip into something you can't pull him back from? Each Thursday, the cycle repeated. Same time. Same corner. Each package a little larger, each exchange a little colder. I thought of calling the police. But what would I say? My son sneaks out and takes envelopes from strange men. That wasn't evidence, it was suspicion. And suspicion could destroy his life if I was wrong. But what if I wasn't wrong? What if silence destroyed him instead? And then came the night that stripped away all denial. This time, there was a third car. The man who stepped out wasn't like the others. His stance radiated power. His eyes scanned the shadows as though he owned them. Even from my hiding place, his presence made my skin crawl. The conversation was short, heated. My son's voice wavered, but his shoulders stayed squared. Then the man leaned closer, his words cutting across the night like a blade. If you can't handle this, you're out. And if you're out, you're done. Understand? The threat was unmistakable. Not done as in excluded. Done as in finished. I clutched the steering wheel, knuckles white, lungs frozen. Later that night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the clock ticking like a judge's gavel. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, hollow-eyed and trembling. If I confronted him and he was innocent, I would be the one who destroyed us. If I stayed silent and he was guilty, I would be the one who let him slip away. It was the cruelest prison of all, not made of stone or bars, but of love. Love that bound me to him so tightly every option felt like betrayal. I pressed my palms to my face, whispering into the silence, "What am I supposed to do?" The line between mother and detective blurred until I didn't know who I was anymore. Only one truth remained clear: Thursday would come again. And when it did, I would have to choose. I have replayed this night in my head 1,000 times. Some memories fade with age, but not this one. This one is carved into me like a scar. Because that was the night the fragile illusion I clung to about my son began to unravel, and I stood on the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. The decision to follow him didn't come easy. Every part of me warred against it, the mother who wanted to trust him, the woman who dreaded what she might discover, and the desperate soul inside me who needed to know. I told myself it would be just one night of answers, and then maybe I could sleep without my mind running in circles. But that night stretched into something that changed everything. He left the house just past 9. No suit, no tie, not even his work shoes. Instead, dark hoodie, jeans, sneakers. A man dressed for shadows, not daylight. I waited at the window until his figure disappeared down the block. Then I slipped into my old coat, the one that still smelled faintly of mothballs, and stepped out into the night. My heart thudded so hard I thought it might give me away. The quiet neighborhood felt different, eerie, every dog bark, every flickering streetlight making me feel like a trespasser in my own life. He walked fast, almost too fast, like a man with a mission. I hung back, ducking behind cars or hedges whenever he glanced around. Every step pulled me deeper into a world I wasn't sure I wanted to enter. At the corner, he stopped. A car idled. There, dark, anonymous, engine purring like a beast in the night. He glanced around, paranoid, jittery. Then he climbed in. I froze. My breath caught. There was no way I could follow on foot without being noticed. So I did the only thing I could. I memorized the license plate. Numbers and letters etched into my mind like a lifeline. When the car pulled away, I wasn't far behind. Not running, just moving, fast enough to catch the late-night bus that followed in the same direction. My hands trembled as I scribbled the plate into my notebook, the same one where I had recorded his strange phone calls, his late arrivals, his shifting stories. 20 minutes later, the car turned off into a part of town I hadn't set foot in for years. The nice restaurants and cafes gave way to shuttered storefronts, graffiti-covered walls, and warehouses with broken windows. A place where the air itself felt heavier. The car finally parked in front of the dim, half-abandoned building. One faint light glowed from the second floor. My son got out, looked around, and then slipped inside. I stayed across the street, pressed against a cold brick wall, my knees aching but my focus sharp. The building seemed to swallow him whole. And I just waited. Minutes stretched like hours. The wind whipped through the empty street, carrying faint sounds to me. And then I heard it, voices. I strained my ears, desperate. I couldn't catch everything, but pieces slipped through the cracks. Money's short this week. He doesn't suspect. We'll handle it tonight. Laughter followed, low, menacing. The kind of laughter that made goosebumps crawl up my arms. And then my son's voice. Clear. Sharp. A voice I had known since his first cry. "I'll take care of it." Don't worry. Take care of what? Handle what tonight? The boy I had raised, the one who once cried because he broke a neighbor's window, what was he tangled up in now? Every part of me screamed to leave. Go home. Pretend I never saw any of this. But love doesn't make you rational. Love makes you reckless. So I crossed the street. Each step echoed in my chest like a drum. My hand hovered over the door handle, trembling. And then, before I could touch it, the door flew open. And there he was. For a heartbeat, his mask cracked. His eyes widened like a child caught red-handed. But then it hardened. His voice came sharp, defensive. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I swallowed. My voice quivered, but I forced it out. "I could ask you the same. What is this place? Who are those men?" He stepped outside, shutting the door so fast it nearly grazed my arm. "You shouldn't be here." "Then tell me why you are," I shot back. "You've been lying. Sneaking out. Taking strange calls. I deserve the truth." For a second, I thought he might give it. His lips parted, and I saw conflict flicker in his eyes. But then he shook his head. "Go home, Mom." I grabbed his sleeve. "No, not this time. I heard you. Handle it tonight." "What does that mean?" His jaw tightened. He pulled away, but I held on. "If you don't tell me, I'll find out myself," I whispered. "I'm your mother. I have a right to know." And that's when I saw it. A shadow in his face I had never seen before. Cold. Hardened. "You don't want to know," he said, his voice low, dangerous. "Trust me." My grip faltered. My chest clenched. "I don't want to lose you," I whispered. For just a split second, something softened. But then it was gone. He looked back at the door. Then at me. "If you love me, don't follow me again." And with that, he disappeared back inside. I don't remember how I walked home. Only that my legs felt like lead, my mind a storm. His words echoed endlessly. "You don't want to know. If you love me, don't follow me again." But I did want to know. I had to. Because whatever he was caught up in, it was pulling me in too. When I reached the kitchen, I sat at the table, staring at my notebook. Those neat little entries, license plates, times, phone calls, they weren't just harmless notes anymore. They were evidence. Pieces of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to finish. The next days were unbearable. I tried to play normal. Cooked his favorite meals. Smiled when he came in. But he was slipping further away. More late nights. More phone calls. More shadows in his eyes. Then came Thursday. I was washing dishes when I heard him in the hallway, voice tense, urgent. "No." I said, "I'll get it done. Don't call me again. Get it done." The words chilled me to the bone. That night, when he left again, I knew. I couldn't stand by anymore. I opened my notebook, not just to write, but to plan. If I had to follow him again, I would. If I had to dig deeper, I would. Because ignorance wasn't safety anymore. It was a slow death. I whispered into the empty kitchen, almost like a vow. "I will find out what you're hiding. Not to betray you, but to save you, whether you want me to or not." And in that moment, my path became clear. The next chapter of this nightmare wouldn't be about suspicion. It would be about uncovering the truth, no matter how dark it was. Because I wasn't just his mother anymore. I was his last line of defense. I once believed a parent could see straight through their child, like glass. That no matter how old they became, no matter what masks they wore for the world, a mother would always recognize the truth beneath. But in the days that followed, that belief cracked. And then it shattered. After the confrontation outside the warehouse, something inside my son shifted. He grew sharper. Colder. His words clipped short, his eyes sliding away when mine tried to meet them. I tried to hold on to normalcy. I cooked his favorite meals, folded his laundry, kept the house warm with small touches of love. But the air was different now, charged, restless. Every creak of the stairs at midnight, every buzz of his phone, every slam of the front door carved deeper into my fear. It felt like I was living with a stranger wearing my son's face. And I couldn't sit idly by anymore. I became something I never imagined, a detective in my own home. The notebook became my weapon, my shield. Every time he left, I scribbled down times, places, directions. I dug through discarded receipts, memorized numbers I glimpsed on his screen, even noted names from muffled conversations he thought I couldn't hear. Piece by piece, a pattern emerged. Late-night meetings. Always near warehouses, abandoned alleys, or desolate corners of town. Always with men older, harder, their voices carrying weight like storm clouds. The words I caught did drop: package, money, debt, were puzzle pieces I didn't want to connect. But the picture was forming anyway. It happened one Saturday evening. He left in a hurry, muttering, "Back in an hour." I followed, keeping farther back than usual, every nerve on fire. This time, he didn't go to a warehouse. He went to a small, run-down apartment complex across town. He rang a buzzer, glanced around nervously, and slipped inside. I waited in the shadows, my breath fogging in the cold night air. 20 minutes later, the door creaked open. My son emerged, hoodie pulled low, clutching a small duffel bag. He handed it to a man waiting in a sleek black car. The man unzipped it, peered inside, and gave a curt nod before driving away. My son just stood there for a moment, his shoulders slumping, his body sagging under a weight I couldn't see. When he finally walked away, I inched closer, my legs trembling. The apartment door was left ajar, and what I saw inside stopped my breath cold. Rows of little bags stacked neatly on a table. Powder. Pills. Substances I didn't fully recognize, but I didn't need to. I knew enough. Drugs. I stumbled home like a woman half dead. My heart thrashed against my ribs, my mind spinning in 1,000 directions. This wasn't whispers of suspicion anymore. This was crime. Real crime. The boy I once cradled, the boy who begged me to check under his bed for monsters, he was walking among them now. And worse, he wasn't just surrounded by monsters. He was working for them. That night, I buried my sobs into my pillow, muffling them so he wouldn't hear when he returned. Every cry tore me apart like shattered glass. I wanted to confront him, to shake him, to scream, "What are you doing?" But I knew reckless words would only drive him deeper into the shadows. If I lost his trust entirely, I might lose him forever. The next morning, exhausted and broken, I did something I had never thought I would. I called Clara, an old friend whose brother worked in law enforcement. At first, I didn't tell her the whole truth. I danced around the edges. What if someone you love is caught up in something bad? What if they're in over their head? Clara's voice was steady. You can't fix what you don't face. If you know what's happening, ignoring it won't make it disappear. Her words were true. But the thought of my son in handcuffs, locked away behind bars, crushed me. I couldn't hand him over. Not yet. I wanted to save him myself. Fate, however, doesn't wait for readiness. One evening, as he rushed out the door for another errand, he forgot his phone on the table. For a full minute, I just stared at it, my hands shaking. It felt like a forbidden fruit, dangerous, tempting. I knew it was wrong. A betrayal. But I also knew this might be the only way to see the truth without filters. With trembling fingers, I unlocked it. The messages were undeniable. Drop by midnight. Payment tomorrow. Don't let her find out. That last one. Her. Me. He knew I was suspicious. He knew I was circling closer. And instead of trusting me, he was burying himself deeper. I set the phone down, my hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. When he returned, I smiled. pretended nothing happened. But inside, the fracture widened. Days later, the dam broke. He sat at the kitchen table, hollow-eyed, his hands trembling as he ate. I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Is this what you've become?" I whispered. His fork froze. His eyes snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I slammed my notebook on the table. Pages filled with notes, times, license plates. "I know," I said, my voice breaking. "I know everything." For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he laughed, bitter, hollow, sharp. "You think you know, but you don't. Then tell me." I pleaded. "Tell me why you're doing this. Who are those men? Why are you risking everything?" His eyes darkened. His voice was low, jagged. "Because I don't have a choice." The words poured out like poison. He had fallen into debt, gambling, reckless spending, favors from the wrong people. At first, he thought he could manage. But the more he tried to climb out, the deeper he sank. And when the collectors came, they didn't take no for an answer. They gave him opportunities. Small jobs. Deliveries. Errands. It was supposed to be temporary, he whispered. Just until I paid them back. But now, I'm stuck. Tears blurred my eyes. "Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you let me help?" "Because I was ashamed," he said, his voice cracking. "Because you already gave me everything, and I threw it away." For the first time in weeks, I saw him. Not the mask. Not the hardened shadow. But my son, the frightened boy beneath. The room was silent, heavy with truths we could no longer escape. I wanted to hold him, to promise him it would be all right. But promises couldn't erase the reality. He was tied to dangerous men. Men who wouldn't let him walk away easily. Saving him meant more than love. It meant action. But what kind of action? Do I go to the police and risk him in prison? Or do I try to pull him out myself, knowing it could destroy us both? The choice loomed over me like a shadow with no end. By the end of that night, the mirror was shattered. The truth was out, raw, jagged, impossible to piece back together. And instead of relief, I felt only the weight of an impossible burden. I had uncovered his secret. But knowing didn't make it easier. Because now, I had to decide how far I was willing to go to save him without losing him forever. I once thought the hardest part was finding out what he was hiding. But I was wrong. The hardest part was still to come. Living with the truth. And deciding what to do with it. The days after the confrontation felt like living inside a haunted house. The walls hadn't changed, his shoes still sat by the door, his room still smelled faintly of his cologne, but everything was different. The bond that once tethered us, mother to son, strong as iron, now felt like a rope fraying thread by thread. I kept replaying the night in my head. The moment my voice shook when I whispered, "I heard something strange about you. I didn't believe it, but I had to watch you." Those words echoed endlessly. They had been both a confession and an accusation, both a desperate plea for love and, in his eyes, the deepest betrayal. Daniel wandered through the days in silence. Sometimes defensive, sometimes sullen, sometimes full of a guilt he tried to hide. But what broke me wasn't his silence. It was his gaze. He looked at me as if he didn't know whether I was still his protector, or if I had turned into his enemy. One afternoon, a knock startled me. Mrs. Green, my neighbor, the very woman whose whisper had first cracked open this nightmare, stood on my porch clutching a basket of muffins. Her smile was polite, but her eyes betrayed nerves. "I hope I didn't cause trouble," she said, shifting on her feet. "I only told you what I saw, because I thought you deserved to know." I invited her in. She sat at my table, her hands twisting together. "You didn't cause trouble," I said softly. "The truth did. And the truth has a way of changing everything." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. I saw him again, with those boys. But this time it looked different. He wasn't standing with them. It looked like they were surrounding him. Her words felt like lead dropping in my chest. Was Daniel still trapped? Had my watching been too late? Too clumsy? I forced myself to smile weakly. Thank you. I'd rather hold the ugly truth in my hands than cradle a beautiful lie. That night, Daniel's door creaked open. He sat on his bed, the glow of his desk lamp cutting across his tired face. His voice was barely a whisper. "Mom, you were right to watch me." Every muscle in me tightened. I stood frozen, waiting for the words that would either break me or set me free. He swallowed hard, his shoulders tense. They weren't my friends. Not really. They pulled me in with promises, respect, belonging, excitement. But it wasn't friendship. It was control. They made me skip class, run errands, steal things. And when I said no, they threatened me. His voice cracked. "I thought if you knew, you'd be ashamed of me." I sat beside him, my hand trembling as I brushed his hair back. Ashamed? Daniel, I was never ashamed of you. I was terrified for you. There's a difference. For the first time in weeks, he leaned into me, resting his head on my shoulder like he used to when he was little. I should have told you sooner. And I realized, in that fragile moment, that my watching had never been about suspicion. It had been about love. About seeing the fear he couldn't name out loud. The next morning, I picked up the phone. Not to condemn him, not to punish him, but to save him. I called the school counselor. I contacted a community program for boys his age. I even spoke quietly with a local officer who worked with families in danger. Daniel resisted at first. He flared with anger, embarrassed, begging me not to drag outsiders into our lives. But when he saw that he wasn't alone, that other boys had fallen, had risen, had started again, his fury ebbed into reluctant hope. I walked with him into every meeting, stood by his side through every raw conversation. And slowly, day by day, I saw light creeping back into his eyes. Weeks slipped into months. Daniel returned to his studies, stayed away from the boys who once circled him, and began piecing himself back together. But I carried something heavier, the weight of watching. It would have been so easy to stay blind, to dismiss the whispers, to hide behind denial. To say, "Not my son." He would never. But love isn't blindness. Love watches. Love listens. Love risks being wrong 100 times if it means being right once when it matters most. Watching my son wasn't betrayal. It was the truest form of protection. Because sometimes children, no matter how grown, can't see the shadows around them. Sometimes they can't speak their fear. And sometimes they need their mothers to see what they can't admit. One evening, Daniel and I sat on the porch as the sun bled gold across the sky. He was quiet, thoughtful, his face softer than it had been in months. "Mom," he asked suddenly, "are you ever going to stop watching me?" I smiled, brushing the hair from his forehead the way I did when he was small. "No, not because I don't trust you. Because watching is what mothers do. Sometimes in the open, sometimes in the shadows. Always to keep you safe." He sighed, half accepting, half resisting, but deep down, I think he understood. As the cicadas hummed and the evening light wrapped around us, I made a silent vow. To always watch, not with suspicion but with love. To never let fear silence me, and to never let pride keep me blind. Because hearing something strange about my son had nearly broken me. But watching him, truly watching him, had saved him. And in saving him, I had saved myself.